How's it going? My name's Ignacio. I want to take time to be able to talk about our Father God and our oldest brother Jesus. The reason why I call him our oldest brother Jesus is because, I want to be remembered in the family of God. And, to say that God's son, Jesus, is my oldest brother is saying that he's still alive. When you say, he's coming one day and this and that, I say that he's alive ever since he had risen. And, I know that he's always with me. So, I don't worry about whether he's coming or going or, you know what I mean? I just know that he's here. And that's the whole reason why I say he's my oldest brother, you know what I mean, in the faith. Because I claim that. I always want to remind myself that. I always tell myself that. And, I always separate when it comes down to like Father God and everything else, everything that's earthly, that is. I look at our Father God, and then of course I got my daddy that birthed me, one of my birth parents, and then I have my spouse's daddy, which was considered my dad. And then, you know what I mean? And then of course we have our oldest brother Jesus, and then we have our siblings, you know what I mean? But I always separate the fact, that's why I say he's the oldest brother, you know what I mean? Because I do have a brother that's got a couple of months on me, and then I got my little brother and I got my little sister. So, you know what I mean? Like when you give him the title as the oldest brother, you always say, all the years that have passed, he is the oldest, you know what I mean? There's nobody that's gonna be at his age or in his position in the faith or in everything that you claim and everything that you hold on to. Because, it might seem like something simple or little, but like to me, words are a big thing, you know what I mean? It's as simple as, well, you're not gonna look at, your friend the same way you would your sibling, you know what I mean? You're not gonna have that kind of idea. And the reason why I separate, father from daddy and dad is because, I knew a lot of people that grew up without, one or the other. I didn't grow up with my mom. I grew up with my daddy, you know what I mean? And so, like, for those that didn't have their daddy in their life, you know what I mean? A lot of people tend to hold on to a lot of what they gone through in their life. And so sometimes when you hold the same position as father, like that's my father, and then people say, well, God is your father as well, you're going to get your trauma and your emotional state is going to combine the two, and you're going to grow an inside anger naturally, you know what I mean? So I only say it so it comes out of me naturally, so that way it inspires others and they can understand what I'm trying to say, because I don't like to mix that up, you know what I mean? Especially when I'm trying to inspire people to come back to our Father God. I don't want to be saying, well, oh, that's my father, and yeah, and God's my father too, and this, and no, I separate each of these things so that way it all has its own meaning, its own representation, and its own respect, you know what I mean? And so when you separate that, and you look at your earthly parent as your daddy, whenever you hear daddy or something like that, you're going to give that anger or that trauma or whatever experience that you had to whom it belongs to. You know what I mean? And when you say father, you always remember that, well, my father hasn't done nothing to me. He hasn't hurt me. He hasn't done these things. I might have learned a couple of lessons. I might have been here and there. But you're not going to use that anger or experience or sadness together in one. You're going to separate it. You know what I mean? And so that's why I say that, you know what I mean? Because the mental is a big thing. We have flashbacks like that. We have memories that go just like that, in and out of our minds every single day. And so there are what they call trigger words. It's going to trigger in your head that just, and you're just going to react based off of whatever triggered you. And so that's the whole reason why I talk about it in that fashion, and so that way, you can have a better understanding, and you don't have to, like I said, put that experience, but you give it to whom it belongs to. And so, as far as, like, of course, the same representation would be, if it was your mommy, your birth parent, and then your mom would be, of course, your spouse's mom. You know what I mean? And so that's how you kind of like put it together like that, and you give each of it its own respect, and you separated the facts. And in your mind, once you have this being processed in your head, and you're like, oh, okay, well, you're talking about my mommy, or you talk about, okay, you got that, you're separating things where you're not just instantly putting in whatever you feel based off of that. And so, words are a big deal. Words are a big deal. It's like if somebody were to use a word and it was hurtful to you, you know what I mean? Some of these hurtful words, compared to like something in comparison of something that you really like gorgeous or pretty or, handsome and stuff like that. There are words that are opposite to that that's already disrespectful. So words are, they do mean something. They do affect you in a way, you know what I mean? They will stand out once you hear it, you know what I mean? But our Father God, He's an amazing and wonderful creator. He is everything that every man and every woman needs. You know what I mean? One of the things that I like to talk about is mainly being for those that were in the same position that I was. You know what I mean? I was drug addicted, alcohol bound, still fighting my withdrawals. You know what I mean? I still, I got my own battles that I got to go through. You know what I mean? But I like to protest on a lot of things and speak my mind on stuff. And I feel like that's what I can do right now. You know what I mean? I don't have like a lot of money to be able to donate like I wish that I could. I don't have a whole followers group and all kinds of other things. You know what I mean? I'm limited to what I have. And right now, I'm going to use everything that I have, and that's my words. If I see something, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to give out an idea, you know what I mean? However it is, I've always been that kind of person that liked to be protective, and, I'm a really protective person. Naturally, I've always been like that, even when I was in high school, and I used to get bullied a lot. That's why, I got bullied a lot back in middle school and elementary, being, Korean and Mexican, and I look more Korean in my eyes than anything else. So I used to get a lot of that teasing and all that kind of stuff. And, after a while, all the teasing and all that kind of stuff, I kind of transformed myself into something, I don't know. I might not look like it, but back in the day, I used to go around a lot with a lot of women, and it all started with a lot of the teasing. It hit my self-conscious in a way where my self-esteem, it hit me in a way where it made me always feel like I had something to prove. They'd always, the jokes. And so I was always out there feeling like this low self-esteem, or this feeling about myself. And, I would go out there, and of course I know a way with my words. I know how to talk. And, I grew up in a middle class. I didn't come up poor. My daddy was in the army, and him and my mommy separated and everything. And like I said, I didn't grow up with her a lot. And I did get bullied a lot, like I said. And I always felt like I was always cool with anybody. You know what I mean? It didn't matter if you were a rocker, you were a rebel. I didn't care what race you were. I didn't care if you were hip hop or if you were a member. or if you were in the like from the hood. I didn't care about anything like that. You know what I mean? I was just the kind of person where if you were cool, I was cool. I was cool with all the sporty people. You know, like I said, there was people that would bully me. You know, but I handled that on my own. Once I got into middle school, I started getting into fights and stuff and started defending myself. Um, and then I started working into like drugs. You know what I mean? And you know that all that kind of stuff, I kind of did it where my parents didn't ever really know about it for the longest time. You know, I would go out and I'd do these things, and you know, I was in sports and stuff. And so, you know, I go out on my parties. I do like just pretty much whatever I wanted to do to experience like my own life the way that I was doing it. And you know, I was, like I said, I was cool with everybody. And then I was always talking to these women and everything, and always, hey, let's go to this kickback and let's go do this, and you know, I know where it's at. And so I was always that kind of person that was always out there doing that. And you know, when I used to get bullied a lot, I started wanting to take care of other people, like my friends, and that's how I met more friends. You know, I would take care of them when they would get bullied a lot. And you know, I always felt some like I always felt good about it. You know what I mean? Whenever I saw like, hey, thanks, man. You know, they kept messing with me, and you know, it felt real good being able to do something about it at those times. You know what I mean? And I've always kept that. You know, like I said, I have a little sister. I got a little brother. I got a brother that's the same age as me, but he's like 4 months exactly apart from me. And we've been a family since I was 5. I've always had respect for him and everything too. And you know, we would take care of each other when we would go out to like kickbacks and stuff like that. I didn't really ever drag my little brother into that stuff, or my little sister, you know what I mean? But there was a lot of times, you know, I had to take care of them too. And I remember my little brother told me, you know what, you used to be real crazy back in high school, that nobody really picked on me because they knew who you were and everything. And so like, I guess it had its own effects, you know what I mean? I would I was like known for always having weed on me, you know what I mean? I was always a kickback, chill kind of dude, you know what I mean? I wasn't always looking for problems, you know? I was always just chilling and regular, just out to have fun, just trying to talk and play sports all the time. I was always playing basketball, football, soccer too, you know what I mean? We was always just playing all kinds of events and stuff. And so like those were like the things that I really enjoyed. And you know, there was a lot of times that I didn't realize a lot of things that I was doing, you know. uh, I started like getting into my own feelings on things, you know. Once you're in a relationship with a girl, my first relationship, serious relationship, I was in high school. And this happened like, I had this best friend that I had. She had passed away in a car crash. And that's like what kind of ignited a lot into me. And you know, I shouldn't, like, I'm not gonna say that it's okay to use something that happened to your friend that you care about dearly to go out and do whatever you want to yourself as far as drug abuse. Don't ever use that as a reason. You know, when I was young, I feel more horrible about it now, to feel like I could use the passing of somebody as an excuse to go out there and experiment into drugs because of my depression or however I felt. You know what I mean? I don't encourage for anybody to do that, because you know, we should let them rest in peace and not really have to carry that with them. You know what I mean? Knowing that we're gonna be out here using that as an excuse to do those things. And you know, I got into other drugs. And you know, it's gonna happen out of the influence of things. I don't really think that marijuana is a gateway to other drugs. I think it's mainly the experience of the people that you meet. who you come into contact with, and and some of those things just end up coming into your life. You know, uh, I was always drinking, going out to parties, playing beer pong. Going out there having a good time and stuff, and um, it was just a lot of the things that were going on that just led me into these drugs, and I started getting into slanging. I started slanging mollies and shit, and you know, I remember there was this one time that I had just read up on some pills. There were some dragonflies, and I always test my shit every time I do something before I go out there. And I remember I tried these, and I fell into like one of the worst depressions that I could have ever imagined. It wasn't like something that was natural to me. It was like pretty bad. Most of the time I was always in a real good mood, or all ready to go out there to kickbacks and do whatever, you know what I mean? And like, I remember I started feeling real odd, you know what I mean? Like I was like questioning why I was doing this. And I had slang out some of those, and I felt horrible after a while. And I was like, damn, once I started hearing the reports back that they were feeling the same way, I remember that I had gotten it again, and I felt fucking depressed. I was like, you know what? I can't believe I'm actually giving this to people. And I fucking took them all. I took 23 and a half of them. And I overdosed that day, and it fucked me up pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. I was on some other shit. And um, like, I just had a lot that was running through my mind, and it fucked me up bad. And after that, I hadn't touched pills for a while until later on. And I got into other things. I started doing other shit, and I kept doing that for so long. And it was just something that was carrying with me. And my parents, they were really good parents, you know what I mean? They got me what I needed, took real good care of me. It wasn't because of their parenting that led me into that. Like I said, it was more influence, it was more self-decisions, it was more of just me wanting to do whatever I wanted to do. And I was real good at playing it off, honestly. There was a lot of times you can't really tell off of me. I'm not that kind of person that's like, and acting all tripped out and all that kind of shit. I was always just somebody that was like more relaxed, more composed, and talkative and shit like that. And it was real difficult to be able to tell about some stuff like that. And most of the time I wouldn't be at home when I was gonna do something like that. I would just be out on my own and stuff. And when I got into my first real relationship, like I said, in high school, um, I was already starting off on my mollies and all that. And after that, I was with her for, I think, about a year. We'd go out to kickbacks together. We'd go out and have our own fun. And I remember that those mollies, they took a grip on me. And I remember that we cheated on each other and we broke up. I remember her parents were devastated too. Like, her daddy wanted me to have a baby with her. He wanted grandbabies and everything. I was real cool with them and everything, and that's usually how I am. Like, I could be real cool with like parents. I could be real cool with everybody. Like I said, I'm talkative. I could be real respectful. And I just, like I said, I just ended up slipping on that and started going back out there and started dating again. Well, not really dating, just messing around and all that. And I remember that I always going out to kickbacks, getting back all drunk, like fucked up, blacking out and shit. I got into fights at school and shit. I got sent to what do you call it? One of those detention of schools and all that, disciplinary schools and shit. I got sent there for like about a year. I got in a fight with some dude and everything in class. And there was a lot going on. And you know, like I said, I was drinking a lot and going out. Ended up on probation. And I was still going out. I couldn't stop, you know. I was just always trying to have fun. I didn't like to be alone. I didn't like to just be chilling there at the house. And you know, when I would, I'd be there on my video games and shit, and you know, I'd just be doing my own thing. But I really enjoyed the outdoors. I really enjoyed being out, you know what I mean, and having a good time and being with all my friends and everything. And you know, I just kept doing that, and there was a lot of different women. They were really good women too. And you know, when you go from moving around so much and doing all that, you know, you think back on it a lot, you know. I do. I think about it a lot. I think about how they could be doing and if they're doing all right these days. Like, I don't go out there looking for them and none of that, but, you know, sometimes it crosses my mind and shit. And you're probably like, well, what does this have to do with God? But I'm getting there, you know. This is just a little background about myself where you can kind of understand where I'm coming from. And, you know, I remember there was this one day I was talking to this girl. And I was in my room, and I was baptized in a Catholic church when I was young, and I didn't really ever understand it. I just remember I was sitting in my room, and I just said, you know what? I don't know who you are, God. I've heard about you. I've been baptized. I don't really know too much about you. But you know what? If you don't send me a woman that's gonna change me for the better, I'll probably end up dead. I'll probably end up overdosing or something's gonna happen to me. I said, you know what? Can't you just send me a woman that's gonna take me away from all this? And I remember this girl that I was talking to, she just messaged me out of nowhere, just randomly. I love you. And then I didn't think nothing of it at first, but then I was like, you know what, maybe if I give this a chance. And I said, you know what, God? Is this the woman that you want me to be with? And then like somebody from like a week ago, they end up messaging me. It took a whole week for it to get here, you know, this was a week past, and they finally messaged and responded, and then that instant said yes. I look at the message, go back and I look at the message, I see the time that we were last talking and all this, and I was like, but it happened as soon as I said, God, this is the one that you want me to be with. And it popped up, yes. I was like, I felt weird. I was like, all right. I was like, fine. If this is the one that you want me to be with, I'm going to give her every little exam to see if it's true. I want to know, is this really from you? Are you really saying this? Because, you know, I want to be able to see. If I want to see for myself. I want my feelings, my emotions, my life. I want my direction, everything to be different. And I even said, you know how I could be. You know that it's real hard for me to take a relationship serious. I end up talking to this one, I meet this one, and and at that point, I said, you know what? I'm gonna hold on to this. And I decided to do all the things that I wanted to do still. I was still talking, doing whatever I wanted. But with this one, it took me about a year just to meet her. We would always talk. We'd talk on the phone, message, all that kind of shit. And I thought that was different already. Most of the time I would have already met up with my wife, with a woman. And I was like, why is this going on? Like, how, like, took a whole year. And, during that time, I was still talking to other people and all that. And I was just holding on to, like, well, this was supposed to be, like, what's going on. And talking to other women, still going out and all this stuff. I got into fights. I remember I got jumped one time pretty bad. Busted me up pretty good with some brass knuckles and shit. And she wanted to go see me, but I was like, nah, you know what? Right now I don't look good, you know what I mean? I don't want the first day you see me to be all busted up and So I was like, nah, not right now. And every time I wanted to see her, she was either too busy, and it was like that for a while. And after a while, I was like, you know what? It's probably just like, it's probably a game. Everything I was thinking was just it probably wasn't something. And I think when I had prayed, we had already been talking for a couple of months. And then we would stay up all night talking, you know what I mean, and messaging and all that. And then I remember when that year had passed, that day that I just got fed up. I think it was like a little bit after high school. Or like, yeah, it was a little bit after high school. I just told her, I was like, you know what? We don't ever get to meet. No, nothing like that. I'm telling you now. If I can't see you today, I don't want to talk to you at all. I don't even want to meet you. No, nothing. None of that. We're just going to drop this. Don't call me no more. No, nothing. She says, all right, fine. Let's meet up. It's like, all right, what the heck? So I said, well, where do I go, or where do we meet up? She gives me the address and everything, so I go. I remember it was my mama, my daddy's wife, because it's my mommy, my mama, and of course my mom. And so I got my mama to go take me over there, and I remember we pull up to the apartments, and my mama's sitting right there, and she's driving and everything, and I'm telling her about this girl, how I'm finally meeting her and all that. And then I see her coming out of the apartments and everything, and I tell my mama, I was like, that's the one right there. She's supposed to change my life. She looks at me, all right, man, call me when you need a ride. And so I get down, I go over there, we start talking, and I think at that time it was already like 7 o'clock at night. And we go over there and we start talking, and we're chit-chatting all day outside and everything, and before you know it, it's already like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh God. And we were just talking outside the whole time, and I thought that was like something different. I was just like, I thought it was really cool. I called up my mama and everything. She comes pick me up, take me back, and we end up seeing each other again and again and again, and it was weird because like we would spend a lot of time, and I started feeling real good about it. It didn't change me at that instant like that, you know. We would talk, we would be together and everything, and you know, after some time, we got into a couple of arguments and shit. And you know, when you're the way that I used to be, you know, you start to feel like, oh damn, what if they do me dirty like that? And you start to defend your feelings real easily, you know what I mean? And you know, she was the same way too. She was pretty defensive about her feelings too. And you know, I wanted to still be the person that I was, so you know, sometimes I'd still go out, and she would go out too. And I started like feeling real weird about it. I was like, well, why you gotta go out? And you know, you start to be real defensive, and you start to get jealous, I guess you could say, in a sense, where you're like over worried, or you just want that time again, and you start thinking about things. You get upset, and you know what? I don't want to see you, and then split. Me and her, we would be on and off a lot, and you know, I was still doing my drinking and everything, and me and her were on and off for a while. When we were cool, it was cool. When we were separate, I'd be out there talking and everything, and then out of nowhere, she'll message me, or sometimes I'll randomly message her, and we'll get back. And then we'll be together for a while, and then we'll separate. And then I'll be back out there talking again. But little by little, over time, when we would separate, I couldn't get her out of my mind. I really couldn't get her out of my head after a while. After a while, I was like, you know what? I wonder how she's doing. You know what? I started feeling ugly about the things that I was doing. I started like wanting to be working on myself. Like, why do we argue? Why do I have to be out here? Like, why don't I calm my shit down? And you know, she was somebody that was always there for me too. You know, like she would take care of me, and she would talk with me when I needed it, or if I needed something, she would bring me out, like if I needed gas, or you know what I mean? She was always just there for me, you know what I mean? And I remember there was a time that we ran away with each other. We took off, boom, just to go experience being together and everything, and just getting away from everybody. And you know, I had a little bit of problems with my mommy and shit, because, you know, since she wasn't always there, I always had this weird upsetness, you know, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like when somebody's not there, and, or, you know, they work so much that they're always tired, and you don't know why they're tired, and, you know, you don't know why they just want to rest and sleep when they see you. And you know, I couldn't understand it as a kid. You know, for so long you grow up feeling a certain way, wanting to do things, and you know, the way that I was over there at my daddy's compared to like if I was at my mommy's, she liked to be watching a movie, she'll fall asleep, you know what I mean, or she'll get us on so we could sit there and just play for a little while. And you know, it was a lot more different for her. You know, she had to pay child support, and she was always working, and so like, I didn't understand as a kid growing up, and once I got to my teens, I was always out and about, and so like, I always had that don't tell me what to do kind of attitude, because you know, it grew up on me. So me and her, we take off, and you know, there was no way that she could stay with me, and I couldn't stay with her, and that's why we did that. We ran off with each other, and so we would stay outside in the streets and shit. And we would run off to parks and stay out there talking, or we'd sleep in the car, you know what I mean, like all those things. And you know, it started just growing on me for a while more, and I started thinking like, damn, like this woman really loves me, you know what I mean? And I hadn't ever seen that from another woman, you know what I mean? And so like as more and more time had passed, you know, I started feeling a certain way. I started thinking a little bit more different, and it took a long time. I'm not gonna lie. It took a very long fucking time. And you know, there was a lot of times that things could have gone wrong, and you know, there was always that there was always God that was taking care of us. And you know, she was the one that made me and my mommy have a better relationship. She'd always tell me like, why you talk to her like that, and why you act that, like, come on, don't act like that, don't be like that. She like really is one of the ones that really assisted in repairing my relationship with my mommy and the way that I felt about her. And she had always tried to do that, and she was Christian. And you know, my daddy's side was always Catholic, and I didn't ever really go to a Catholic church all the time or a Christian church. My mommy would go after a while, and you know, during that time I got to see my mommy, you know, like she quit drinking, she quit smoking cigarettes after like 20 years. And it all started when she started going back to church. And you know, when I saw that, I was like, damn, I wish that one day I could do that. You know, I didn't get into cigarettes until I was about, I think about like 20 years old. I was more just smoking weed, and I think I started smoking cigarettes because I ended up on probation, and so I had to stop. And there was no other way to be able to stop except for cigarettes and everything. And so, you know, she really brought me back. She's the real reason, like, that brought me back into church. You know, I would just like talk to God, you know what I mean, when I had something going on. And you know, there was a couple of times me and her would break up, and I'd say, you know what, God, you told me that this was my woman. Why are we like this? And I would question myself a lot as well. I'd look at myself in the mirror, and it took a toll on me. I was like, damn, what if I end up risking losing this woman? What if I threw it all away? There was one time that we got in a big old argument. She didn't want to talk to me worth of shit, nothing. Oh, I was so fucking scared. Started talking to other women and everything, and I got into a relationship. We ended up being together for quite some time. I think about like 6-7 months. And I remember she was running through my head. And I went to go see her. And I was like, you know what? I messaged her. I said, hey, how you been? What are you up to? And this and that. And I get a message. Don't message this phone no more. My sister died of an overdose. Leave us the fuck alone. And she said her name. I was like, what the fuck? And so like I was tripping. I fucking go driving all the way to her grandma's house. Her grandma wasn't there. What the fuck? I go driving all the way to her mom's. Go banging on the door. She opens up the door. What's wrong with you? I say, is it true what happened to her? And she's like, what? I show her the message, and she's like, what the hell? I know she's in the room. So I go into the room and I see her, and I was like, what the f-? And I show her the message. I was, why would you send me this? And she's like, I don't have my phone. What the fuck? And she reads it. And she's like, oh my gosh. Turned out it was her sister. I guess they had gone out and she had her sister's phone and all that, and she had fucking wrote that. And I was fucking tripping. I fucking hugged her. I squeezed her. And, you know, when I heard that, I was like, you know, oh shit, this woman that I've loved for this long, you know what I mean? Like, this almost, I thought it was for real. So, like, I hold on to her real tight and I tell her, hey, let's go for a cruise. And so we go back and we go meet, we go stay at my place real quick, and then one thing leads to another. And I remember at that moment, I had said it in my head. I said, God, you told me this is my woman. And we had miscarriages before this, and I said, you know what, God, you know how many I lost. If this is my woman, bear me a child. And I remember afterwards, she pushed me off of her. She was all pissed. I just forgot, like, we haven't been seeing each other. You're in a relationship. And, like, she's like, just get away from me. She's like, I don't know why I came to see you. And I was like, what the fuck? And she's like, just take me home, please. So I take her home. Don't you ever talk to me again. Go be with your bitch and this and that. And I was like, damn. I dropped her off and I felt fucking horrible. I ended up going back to work. I ended up going back to go with that girl that I was with. I let her know what happened. And, you know, she felt like shit about it. And after she had told me that, I felt horrible. I started talking to other girls again, and I didn't want to take this relationship serious. I was like, I felt like I didn't deserve love, you know what I mean? I felt like shit. Me and this girl are driving. I'm in the car. I get a phone call and shit. Hello, is this Ignacio? Yeah, why? It's like, this is, I'm a nurse here at this and this, and I got this person here with me, and she says she's pregnant. I said, what the f? I was like, how do I know it's mine? She's like, listen, either you gonna step up or you're not. I'm just a messenger. She's got a sonogram appointment and this and that. You can go talk to her yourself. And hangs up the phone. The girl's sitting right next to me, and I look at her and I tell her, I was like, you know what? Remember that day I told you that I cheated on you? She's like, yeah. She's pregnant. She said, well, I still want to be with you. Like, what the fuck and all this shit. And I was like, well, you know what? If you're asking me to not be in my kid's life, I ain't gonna do that. Like, I gotta be there. And, you know, she got real depressed and everything. She was real sad about that. She ended up being with somebody else, and I think she had a baby and all that. And so, but that was later. I go over there, I drop her off, and, you know, I tell her, you know, I gotta go to work and all this, and, you know, I end up going and go see her. And I remember I show up, and she tells me, guess what? I was like, what? I passed it 2 months. Oh man, I wanted to cry so bad. You know, I don't know if it was cause like the stress when we would argue or what it was that, you know, that before we end up losing our 2 miscarriages. And, you know, when I found that out, that everything was good, I remember I told her too. I said, you know what, let me scrap up these checks. Let me see what I can do. You deserve to have a place. I get the rest of my checks together. We would go out to go hear the sonogram. Go through the whole thing. I ended up getting a studio, and we started off there, and then from the studio I ended up getting a 2-bedroom after my daughter was born. You know, a lot of people, you know, from what my experience was, you know, with the kind of person that I was, you know, don't feel discouraged if God didn't give you results like that. Look at the little moments, look at the big moments. Watch yourself grow. You know, when all this happened, this was about 11 years ago, 12. We were still on and off during that time. I think about a lot of the ways that I've been with these other women, and I know this is what I deserve. An inconsistent relationship until I pay my tab. But don't feel like you're not loved. Don't feel like you can't have. You know, it wasn't until recently that I started trying to really work on myself again, you know. I did Lent, no sex, no going out and stuff like that. And, you know, for someone like me that was always going out and always wanting to do something and meeting women and doing this, going out to bars and going out to the clubs, go see the women do those things. And, you know, it's real hard. It's real difficult, you know, from the kind of person that I was. But when I did Lent, 40 days, 40 nights is Lent, right? No sex. I did it 13 times. I did 1 year, no sex, no going out to bars and no clubs. And then me and her met up again, and, you know, we were working on a relationship. And then I told her, you know what, I don't want to be like this kind of person that needs to be doing that just because we're together. So I did another couple of months. I did 6 months. It would have been 14 Lents, but I think if I would have done 2 more weeks, then it would have been a completed Lent. So I just call it 13 Lents. And so, yeah, so I did that. And for someone like me, you know, like, the way that I felt about it, I felt like so good about it, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like I overcame a lot. I felt like I did something, you know what I mean? A lot of people, they climb Mount Everest. A lot of people go out and do all this jumping out of planes and shit. I felt like I was doing that, you know what I mean? I felt like I jumped out of a plane. I felt like I climbed up a mountain, you know what I mean? Like, for someone like me to actually be able to accomplish that, like, wholeheartedly, like I felt like I did something with my life, you know what I mean? And like, even now, you know, like, I talk with her and everything, and, you know, like I said, you know, I got a lot of, I've been with a lot of women, you know what I mean? I don't pay for it, don't think like that. It's just, like I said, I know how to talk. I got like, I think like 16 exes. Like 16 or 17. And, you know, they were all like amazing and wonderful women, but, you know, I tried to do something with my life like that, you know what I mean? I still have more time to be able to give more Lent over for the respects of those women that I was with. I almost got enough Lent for each of them for the way I used to be. The way that I feel is that I still have a lot to be able to give back to Father God for everything He's given to me. He's given me an amazing woman that's been by my side. And I've been on a journey that, I'm not expecting results within next week or tomorrow. I'm just enjoying every little bit of everything that happens in my life. From the good, the bad, and everything else that comes with it. And, during that time, I started praying more. I started working into things. And the way that I always see it is like a receipt, I did this, I got to pay this off, I got to do that. What can I do to give back? I like to do donations. I like to give out my time. Like I said, live. I like to talk to other people about stuff like this. I like to try to inspire. I like to tell people to go back to God. And, when I would get locked up, I would talk about God in there. I talk about everywhere that I can, you know what I mean? And I always try to give back in some way. And for those of you that are fighting withdrawals, those of you that, been from here to there when it comes down to women, or some of you women that been with men, I'm praying for you. I know you could do it. I ain't gonna expect you, or you shouldn't expect yourself to do it like that. Because there's gonna be a time where you're gonna look at everything that's on the table and you're gonna sort it out and you're gonna try to pay it back. You're gonna try to look at, that's why I say look at it like a receipt. You know what, I could pay this, I could do this, I could do that. I affected in these areas, I could get back in those areas. I could do this, I could do that. I've always wanted to be somebody that could talk about drug addictions at schools and stuff like that. I remember when I saw that when I went to go to school one time, and hearing somebody talk about those kind of things, even if it's one person that changes out of it, you still accomplish something. And that has always been something that I always want to try to do. I always want to do more reach outs, because this feeling that I feel now, I used to always be so scared of being alone. And now I've been in a position where I've had to sit in my house by myself sometimes and think to myself. Try to resist going out, and I accomplished that. I don't even feel the urges to go out the way I used to. Now I want to be able to focus my time on talking about things. I try writing. I'm not that kind of person that likes to look at people like me and say, oh, you're going to hell, oh, this is... I like to defend people like that. I see that there's a lot of people that get belittled on stuff like that and get pushed on stuff like that. And so, I don't know if you've ever seen any of my videos on Instagram, that I went off on a lot of people that were like that, whether they were speakers or whatever, whoever it was, because they don't understand the kind of life that this is. They don't understand the emotional side. They don't understand the things that we feel. And I stand by your side as a brother. For you, my brother, or for you, my sister. Because we can do it. It don't matter if they're over there feeling the way that they do inside of those places, and they're able to pray and sing and celebrate together and all that. And sure, sometimes I'm a part of it, but I'm with you all as well. And God's been with me too. Led me all the way to the point where I'm at right now. And I feel good about it. I feel real good about it. I don't regret it at all. When I see a lot of those people inside of those places that, they live normal lives, they're not addicted to things and all that, it's real cool to see, you know what I mean? It's a little bit inspiring. I respect more of those people that have a good heart to everybody, instead of just who's a believer and who's not sinning, I got a lot of respect for people that that have a good life and don't look down on people like me. You know what I mean? I got a lot of respect for those kind of people. But I got a lot to say about those people that talk down on people like me, or women in OnlyFans, or men addicted to drugs, or men in the hood and stuff like that. I got a lot of disrespect for a lot of people that talk down on them. Because they don't understand what it's like this. I might not understand the hood, but I know what it's like to be after women. I know what it's like to be on drugs. I know what it's like to slang. I know what it's like to get upset and fight and do all this stuff. I know all about all that. Jail, and I know what it's like to sit in there and get commissary or see that visit and be waiting on it too. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be homeless and be out there and need a beer to go to sleep. I know what it's like. That's why when I see a lot of people that, it's real cool that, they try to protect their faith whatever which way that they feel like. They feel like they don't want to invite something that might be tempting to them, but there's a lot of us that could use it too, you know what I mean? And that's why I want to be able to talk for each of you, or talk with each of you, hoping that those in there can also reach out to each of you, that they can gain some heart from some of this, from a story, from just some regular ass dude that just made a lot of mistakes growing up and still learning from it. But don't think that you ain't blessed just because it ain't happened right away. Don't think that you can't have something just because of what you did. Like I said, one day you're going to lay everything down on the table. You're going to take a look at it, and you're going to give back to God what He deserves. Because if you know how to respect a man, then I know you know how to respect God. If you know how to give back to your brothers, then I know you know how to give back to God. If you know how to take care of others and live and die with them, then I know you could live and die for God too. But do it your way. But don't exclude God. Bring Him to you. Pray to Him. Because He loves you. There isn't no mistake that we can't pay back. We could pay it back. It's the attempt is better than to not try at all. Because once you attempt, you're going to want to keep going, and you're going to do so much more with what you want to accomplish, and you're going to keep going, you're going to keep feeling more better, and you're going to affect more people in a better way in your situation. People that need it, people that you can understand. Because those that can't understand, how can they reach out to you? How can they understand you? How can they do or say something that you can understand and want to be a part of? Because you're not going to want to abandon everything that you came up from, everybody that you grew up with. So bring it to them. Bring them your faith. Bring faith to them. And some of them already got faith, but make it stronger together. They have their place with people that they understand. So make your place with the people that you understand. Because that's where God could use you. How can you go over there and fix somebody's life that hasn't ever lived a life like that? But you know what you can do in those places? You can let them know about your story where they can understand. Not every little bit of it. But the changes that they need is the view that they have about people like me and you. Where they could feel love and compassion towards a man and a woman that made mistakes that they can't understand, that they haven't been in. That's what we can do. Be there for those that are just like us, and to correct the eyes of those that might see bad upon us, because I know sometimes we see bad on them. We have to correct ourselves on what we think about them as well. Let's come together as a fam in faith. Family might be earthly, but I call fam in the faith. Love you all.